The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and this week we are talking about COVID-19 and the super mutants. We talked about the super mutants a few weeks ago, mainly in India, where there was a secondary super mutant, a double mutant. And in that episode, we talked about the triple mutant. Well, today, folks, it has happened. The triple mutant variant has come to the world. Monday, May 10th, CNBC. The article, the World Health Organization classifies triple mutant COVID variant from India as global health risk. World Health Organization official said Monday it is reclassifying the highly contagious triple mutant COVID variant spreading in India as a, quote, variant of concern, end quote, indicating that it's become a global health threat. The World Health Organization technical lead for COVID-19 said the agency will provide more details in its weekly situation report on the pandemic Tuesday, but added that the variant known as B1617, the triple mutant, has been found in preliminary studies to spread more easily than the original virus. And there is some evidence it may be able to evade some of the protections provided by vaccines. The shots, however, are still considered effective. Quote, and as such, we are classifying this variant of concern at the global level, end quote, she said during a press conference. Even though there is increased transmissibility demonstrated by some preliminary studies, we need much more information about this virus variant in this lineage, in all of the sublineages. So we need more sequencing, targeted sequencing to be done. The World Health Organization said last week that it's closely following at least 10 coronavirus variants across the world, including the triple mutant B1617. The variant was previously labeled a, quote, variant of interest, end quote, as more studies were needed to completely understand its significance. What it means for anybody at home is any of the SARS-CoV-2 viruses circulating can infect you and spread, and everything in that sense is of concern. So all of us at home, no matter where we live, no matter what virus is circulating, we need to make sure that we take all of the measures at hand to prevent ourselves from getting sick. I'll go back and read that statement. So all of us at home, no matter where we live, no matter what virus is circulating. Notice the term, what virus is circulating. This has nothing to do with SARS, COVID. This is the new normal. The term in the World Health Organization stating that no matter what virus is circulating, we need to make sure that we take all of the measures at hand to prevent ourselves from getting sick. A variant, and back to the article here, a variant can be labeled as, quote, of concern if it has been shown to be more contagious, more deadly, more resistant to current vaccines and treatments, according to the World Health Organization. The group issued a clarification Monday to their earlier remarks saying that current data shows the existing COVID-19 vaccines remain effective at preventing disease and death in people infected with this variant. The international organization has already designated 3 other variants with the classification B117, which was first detected in England, and the most prevalent variant currently circulating throughout the U.S. B1351, first detected in South Africa, and the P1 variant, first detected in Brazil. B1617 has 3 sublineages that will be described in the situation report on Tuesday. The variant is believed by some to be behind the latest wave of infections in India. The country is averaging about 3,879 COVID deaths per day, according to data compiled by the Johns Hopkins University, though media reports indicate the official figure is being understated. It has reported an average of about 391,000 new cases per day over the past 7 days, up about 4% from a week ago, Johns Hopkins University data shows. The variant has since spread to other countries, including the United States. Now, it's interesting here in the article where it says that Johns Hopkins University has stated an average, but media reports are saying it's understated. So you have a university trained in the scientific method, researching, has done several researches. If anyone's an expert on research, it would be a university. But yet the media is the one that's saying, wow, these are understated. It's bigger. These numbers are much bigger than what these scientists are telling you to say. Which brings us to our next article. Because if we're going to look at the media and how they're the experts on cases, we'll bring up the situation in Ontario, in Canada. So we know, facts, India is dealing with the triple mutant variant. We know that planes are landing in Canada. We know that the Premier of Ontario has asked for airports to be closed, and the reason why that he's asking for airports to be closed is because it is a federal issue and not a provincial issue. There's an article dated from May 10th, 2021 from Global News. Global News, we did cover on a prior episode, is one of the companies that is part of the government's funding of media companies, part of the $500 million of government funding, public money. Unionized as well. An article from May 10th, 2021. Domestic flights account for 80% of COVID-19 cases among air travelers. So it's not the international flights that are coming in, because these variants aren't coming in internationally. It's really the domestic flights that are accounting for these 80% of COVID cases. An article by Saba Aziz. Domestic flights in Canada are currently carrying more confirmed cases of COVID-19 than international flights, according to federal data, accounting for more than 80% of planes with potential COVID-19 exposure. A Global News analysis on Monday of government information on exposure from air travel between April and May of this year showed that 226 domestic flights had at least one passenger who tested positive for COVID-19, compared to 50 planes entering Canada from an international route. Notice the choice words of international route and not just from India. Canada has imposed a raft of strict measures when it comes to international travel, including flight ban from India and Pakistan amid concerns over rising COVID-19 cases, but the same level of restrictions does not apply to passengers traveling within the country. Quote, "We haven't really, as a country, said travel's a bad thing," end quote, Colin Furness, of infection control epidemiologist and assistant professor at the University of Toronto, told Global News. It's reckless and dangerous to impose a harm to others unnecessarily for the most part. As Canada grapples with a third wave of COVID-19, some provinces reporting a surge in new cases. Furness said more needs to be done to discourage domestic travel, including a negative test requirement, heavy testing, and mandatory quarantine. A temporary COVID-19 tax on every seat sold can also help deter people from getting on a plane, he said. You can regulate a lot of behavior simply by making it less appealing, by making it more expensive, and that money can go straight to COVID mitigation, he said. There are no federal requirements if you travel within Canada without having been out of the country. Provinces do have jurisdiction on who can travel into the province, as we see in Atlantic Canada, said Kelly Ouimet, a spokesperson for the Office of Canada's Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Dominic LeBlanc. Our government remains here to help in any way we can, and we will continue to work collaboratively with provinces and territories to fight COVID-19, she told Global News in an email statement. Provincial health authorities have advised against non-health essential travel amid the pandemic and imposed their own set of restrictions. In Nova Scotia, you're legally required to self-isolate for 14 days, even if you don't have symptoms and have traveled from outside the province. But in Saskatchewan, it is not mandatory to self-isolate for 14 days upon the return from an out-of-province trip. Meanwhile, Alberta, which is seeing the country's highest rate of COVID-19 infection, has no interprovincial travel requirements. As of April 19th, Ontario has closed its land borders to Quebec and Manitoba with some exemptions, but trains and flights are permitted to enter. Domestically, there is no issue flying from one province to the other, said Martin Firestone, a travel insurance broker in Toronto. Firestone of Travel Secure said he has recently noticed an uptick in people traveling within Canada, with clients inquiring about travel insurance in other provinces, which is not needed. Currently, international flights are only landing at 4 Canadian airports: Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Calgary. Since many international travelers have to take a local flight to get to their final destination in the country, that could partially explain why domestic flights were carrying more cases of COVID-19, Firestone said. A decline in international travel could also be contributing to why domestic routes now account for a greater proportion of cases. Furness said an outright ban on provincial travel might be needed for a few weeks as variants of concern continue to spread across provinces and territories. The variants, tragically, made the way into the country in the first place, but now that they're here, the worst thing we can do is stir the pot even more to make sure that they go from coast to coast. We shouldn't want that. So the article acknowledges that they came from out of the country, but the author is writing it to say that it's really not international flights that are the problem, it's the domestic problem. Now this particular author, Saba Aziz, currently employed with Global News, has her prior employment from Al Jazeera. She previously worked at Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera is a state-run media company owned by the Qatar. Now, Al Jazeera has been banned in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia banned Al Jazeera and other Qatari websites in early 2017 after Qatari Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani said that he recognized Iran as an Islamic regional power and criticized Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump on their policy towards Iran. He praised the Lebanese organization of Hezbollah and the Palestinian group Hamas. The Emir King leader of Qatar has given praise for the peace-loving people of Hezbollah and Hamas, the same peace-loving people that are currently today raining peace rockets upon Israel. Rockets that have no other purpose to fly through the air and land and bring explosions of joy unto the Israelis. When Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia stand up to Iran and say, no, do not send missiles, money, equipment to Hezbollah and Hamas to rain down peace rockets, enough is enough. You have to question Al Jazeera and the employees of Al Jazeera. To get back to the employee of Al Jazeera that's currently writing for Global News, wrote an article in Al Jazeera, and this particular article was written a few years ago, and it's called First Step, How FIFA Club World Cup is a Prelude to Qatar 2022. The article goes on to talk about how great Qatar is, how it's won its bid to host the World Cup coming next year, and how infrastructures are wonderful and everything is moving ahead, and that people have been interviewed, and I quote from the article, I've been here for 6 years, and in these 6 years I've seen drastic changes, and they are more accommodating, and it's a more tourist friendly now as well. It goes on to say how wonderful Qatar is and how forward-thinking Qatar is. I bring up this particular article and this particular author because do they, Al Jazeera, or the author, acknowledge the 6,500 migrant workers that have died in Qatar since the World Cup was awarded? 6,500 people from India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka have died in Qatar since it's won its right to host the World Cup 10 years ago. The findings are from government sources, and that means that an average of 12 migrant workers from these 5 South Asian nations have died each week since the night in December 2010 when the streets of Doha were filled with crowds celebrating Qatar's victory to host the World Cup. One particular migrant, Mohammed Shahid Mia, he's 29 from Bangladesh, he died when floodwater in his room came into contact with an exposed electrical cable, electrocuting him. That's just one example. Another gentleman, 43, Madhu Bola Pali. He left his wife and 13-year-old son Rajesh in India when he took up a job in 2013, and he never came home. It was in 2019, and one evening, when his roommate returned to his dorm, he found Bola Pali's body on the floor. Like thousands of others, sudden and unexplained death, his passing was recorded as heart failure due to natural causes. So when you read articles in the news and who's writing these particular articles, don't read the headlines. Read a little bit further into the story. Click the link. Read the stories and read the authors who are telling you the information. Because as you can see, there's disease that's happening in India. Flights had been banned, but variants came to Canada, and reporters want you to forget that information and say, no, it's not from international. It's us. It's our problem. They're covering up the whole story or reporting half stories. So always check your sources and read the articles. Because next week we have a very interesting report that came out from the Canadian military. We have an interesting study that shows that COVID-19 deaths did not happen en masse in Ontario. Thank you again for listening. You have yourself a great night and a wonderful week. Thanks for listening to The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant.